אוקיי, די, אין לי כוח, נו מה. Welcome to the death of the authentic. Hello there, humankind. What's up? I'm like super tired. Crazy times. I'm dealing with too many stuff. But I'm here. I'm here. And my neck is... I'm like pulling myself. Hopefully you too. So I'm here to talk about displacements. Ooh! I know it's weird, but whatever. Displacements, a term, wow, a new term, yeah, like always. But this is part of the discourse. מה לעשות? I mean, what should we do? Nothing, this is the reality, so we just speak. So, a displacement, what is it basically? Like, it's coming from geometry and it's like a vector whose length is the shortest distance from like the initial position to the final position. And in psychology, it's an unconscious defense mechanism where the mind redirects emotions or feelings from the target to a less threatening substitute. So when I'm speaking about it, it's because it's a very common tool, like alongside, avoidance, projections, dismissiveness, etc. There's many defense mechanisms, but it's very, very common, especially with the depressive assimilation, that I was speaking about and exists within the culture. And it is fundamental to understand what displacement is in order to understand how the depressive assimilation works and how it's actually layering the death of the authentic. So I'm going to speak about some forms, good examples, So I'm going to start with a very easy peasy one. And it's about like the heteronormative, social pre-assumptions. Today we meet a lot of young people who are getting married, having babies, talking about that this is what they want in life. This ring pressure is real, and it comes from lower ages, okay? And it's a harsh displacement. It's a harsh displacement for fantasy about, imagining that you will be happy, if once you get married, you will have this stability, or about this fantasy about middle class or bourgeois, image of happiness, or they're, the kids are also cooperating in this image, in this photograph. So this whole fantasy is a form of displacement. Like, I want to get married. Why do you want to get married at such young age? Like, it's a social and sociological perspective. It is a displacement. So I'm talking about it because it's very common. I'm not like judging it. I'm just looking at it as something that exists and, saying what it is. It's a displacement, possibly because of fear of judgment, of failures maybe, or imagining that you will be empty without being in this heteronormative form of marriage. Because it is heteronormative form of marriage. Because, wife, husband, kids, this is what it is. So it's part of something It's a good example. If I'm talking about another example that I love personally, it's about soccer or, oh, you heard the chicken. Yeah, I'm living with the chicken. So soccer, baseball, football, all are symbolic displacements for which brings out like the homosexual desires and communication that exist within male societies, male groups. And due to like social oppressions, it's hard or like for them to really bring this not directly, but to discourse it about the relationship itself. So it is a displacement. It's a very interesting displacement. There are many articles about it and research about it, and I love talking about it because it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Like when I see soccer games or basketball games or football games, I look at the way the men communicate with each other, and obviously it's a homosexual like communication, and it's a symbolic displacement of a desire or wish or something deep, you know, and it's just displaced to this tool of soccer, of football, of basketball, where they can bring these forms of and rough edges of homosexuality. And okay, another form of displacement, listen to this: obsessive productivity. Like it's also like a harsh displacement because the capitalistic world is like productivity, okay? And with such emotional void and lack of control people need to deal with on daily basis, they compensate by obsessive productivity. Cannot rest, they cannot be with themselves, and it's a displacement, and it's very hard for the humans who have to deal with this kind of defense mechanism. Also, like obsessive buying, capitalistic manners, you know, as a displacement of loneliness, of void, which is, again, you know, I'm not even talking about why, okay? The displacements are a form to create a depressive assimilation. They're only like a tool. But I have to say this because they're like kind of this meta neuron like connections that create those kind of assimilations eventually. So I want to talk about something that might be it's a soft point. It's like very emotional and it's raw. So I know that I will not speak too deeply about it, but I want to speak about a form of displacement that eventually causes like extreme radicalization of POVs during national or global crises. I mean, when people witness whatever they witness, you know, the reality, it's terrible, as I mentioned, like in every video that I ever had. Like this radicalization comes from a very, very displaced solidarity. Within the team, they themselves, the person who witnessed, the subject, is empathized with. Or like it can come through like radicalization of point of view, like extreme patriotism, extreme nationalism, extreme cancel culture, extreme like hatred toward people, toward like groups. And it's extreme displacement. And it exists like right now, it's super raw. And I'm going to give this kind of form of displacement is when I was like, I'm an Israeli person between Israel and New York. I'm like moving all over, okay? And one of the most common displacement that I met is the presumption. First, I was canceled very fast just because I'm an Israeli person. And right now, like all this woke, leftist, young American people cancel every Israeli person because they were born in a country in post-colonial times. Just was born. Like, while the people in America obey themselves as abiding citizens, you know, to the governmental distress. And it's equivalent to what's going on in Israel. So it's a displacement because they themselves, it's so much easier to hate someone from Israel who just by accident was born in this country, like themselves. Like they hate the country that they are. So it's easier to hate the other. But the reality presented, like not all of the human in Israel, like were born in Israel, want to obey the government. Like especially with the sanctions. The same with people in the USA. So, well, this is very wrong, nonetheless. So, I will continue to speak about it in later days. You know what I mean. Because the skin is too gentle right now. And I want to also maintain a very, very gentle space. So in this manner, I will bring a short quote from HOMI BAHBAH, The Location of Culture. It's a book. Well, I will read from one essay which is talking about the ambivalence of the colonial discourse. So the quote is, "The effect of mimicry on authority of colonial discourse is profound and disturbing, for in normalizing the colonial state or subject, the dream of post-enlightenment civility alienates its own language of liberty and produces another knowledge of its norms. The ambivalence which thus inform us this strategy is discernible," which means everything that I was just talking about as a displacement, HOMI BAHBAH is just speaking about it. And he's talking about the post-enlightenment civility, the way this fantasy alienates from its own language of liberty. And this is why this displacement creates so much frustration in real life, you know. We are all very frustrated, right? I mean, I know I am. At least I have a cute cat near me that you cannot see, but I'm like enjoying it while I'm talking about displacement. Okay, so in this new example, I'm going to speak about something very interesting. Okay, I'm gonna move you a bit. Very interesting, that comes from more the cultural aspects. I'm going to talk about the way images work within the culture and how they perform displacements. I'm going to bring an example of a Kylee Jenner cover on Interview 2015, when she was only 18 years old, yeah, where she was mimicking a disabled sex doll. Okay, this is a great example of fetishizing displacement, where the real image of disabilities has been reduced, aestheticized, and pornographed. Like full-on shocking capitalism, like gore capitalism. This is what it is. And it is a form of displacement because not only it does not liberate real behavior or real performance of disabled sexuality, it displaces the fear of being disabled and how it looks like and how it is presented, which perfectly fits, you know, her image or her branding. But this form of displacement is another example of a displacement within our culture. You know, all those examples that I was bringing are maybe from different aspects, but they rhizomatically connected, because even though they're like in different galaxies, but they're connected because they use a displacement. In this, they are connected, okay? And of course, I can bring like millions examples from the Kardashians of displacement and post-adipolistic, read my previous videos, narratives. But if I will do this, I will go off topic eventually, and I don't want that right now. No. I want to speak on topic, and I want to be precise as possible, and I want to make mistakes because making mistakes are the best in life. Like human, right? So I'm going to speak very, very shortly and finally, because I need my coffee. It's my coffee time. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna have this coffee time with you because I have job and other stuff. But one day I will speak about it also. But I'm going to displace to another form of displacement that come from very different circles, such as governmental behaviors and laws, okay? Like those ethical and moral displacement, and come in view when law enforcement, for example, performs what they were ordered to, regardless of their own ethical POV or moral stance. This kind of displacement is like, what do these people do? They displace their mental state in order to perform this. They need to do what's called moral injury, like to make actions regardless of what their moral or ethical stance are, are. Or when, for example, when lawyers must displace their narratives and create different post-adipolistic narratives in order to displace the actual damage to a procedure, to the actual responsibility of harm and damage, like to an impression management of neutrality, of objectivity, of building a narrative that will create this kind of neutrality. And sadly, it happens and it creates a lot of damage. Yeah, displacement and oppressive assimilation does create a lot of damage. Well, look at life, right? I'm going to say another one, just last one before I'm going to wrap this up. Like, okay, this is a quote from HOMI again. Such contradictory articulates of reality and desire, such in racist stereotypes, statements, jokes, or memes, are not caught in the doubtful circle of the return of the repressed. They are the effect of this avowal that denies the differences of the other, but produces in its stead forms of authority and multiple beliefs that alienate the assumptions of civil discourse. I'm going to add this kind of notes that what he actually say is that a lot of times in those post-colonial times, the line between what is produced as post-colonial, as the colonial actions, and the colonializers, they perform mimicry in order to maintain such authority. And this kind of mimicry actually reproduces the same racism, stereotypes, statements, jokes, myths. And those are displacements. They are not conscious, and they alienate eventually what their really goal is of a civil discourse, right? They perform, despite the statement itself, which is non-performativity, which I was speaking about in Killing Joy Feminism, it contradicts itself. And this kind of unconscious revealing is very, very, very difficult, like, to a subject to really get to the level of consciousness. But I hope we're all going toward this direction. I know I am. I know I wish to have a community that walk this path alongside me, and we can name more and more displacement together, because it's so beneficial. Like, naming the displacement is a vital accommodation. So yeah, this is it for today. Look at this, I'm going to take youpie choopie, loopy loopy loopy. Okay, I'm gonna have my coffee. I wish you an incredible times. I really do. Yalla, see you next time.